So Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is finally here, and I cannot say I'm particularly surprised by the results of this game. I was hoping that it would exceed my pessimistic expectations, but alas, it was all kind of predictable. It all kind of ended up exactly how I predicted it would end up. Unfortunately, I was rooting for this game to prove me wrong, but that just didn't happen. A lot of people are finishing this game and are finding it to be rather disappointing, or not to the pedigree that Rocksteady established with the Arkham series. So this game takes roughly 10 to 15 hours to complete the campaign. If you go for a completionist route, we're looking at roughly 25 hours. So it's not a long game, and that's fine if those hours are substantial and fun, or just offer something really interesting and something that really pushes the boundaries in certain regards. But Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League is just the most kind of vanilla looter shooter. And even among looter shooters, it doesn't really stand out in any significant way in terms of what it does with that formula. It's just a very bland game overall. It's not this awful, dysfunctional game or anything. It just doesn't do anything that makes it stand out or elevates it above the pack. And so what we're left with ultimately is a package that, I don't know, to me felt kind of soulless. Like, you can see glimpses of the potential that this game could have achieved had it not been for the live service elements and the looter shooter elements that hold it back. Now, looking at it from the perspective of a live service, you can already see that this game just does not have legs to last very long based on its player numbers on Steam. The all-time peak for this AAA Rocksteady game, Suicide Squad title that's meant to be a long-term video game for people to engage with for, months and years to come, has only peaked at 13,459 players. That is actually pretty abysmal for a live service launch as far as concurrent player numbers go. Keep in mind that Marvel's Avengers launched at an all-time peak of roughly twice that, 28,145 players, and that was already disconcerting for this particular live service. And guess how that game turned out? It ultimately ended up not being able to maintain itself for the long term. It ended up getting shut down. If Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League's all-time peak concurrent players can't even do half of what Marvel's Avengers did, a failed live service, then there's simply no way in hell that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League can make a recovery unless the future content updates are so substantial and so transformative that it just somehow revitalizes Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, that it brings it back from what already feels like the brink of death. And it's only been 2 days since the game's launch, and it already feels like we can see the writing on the wall with this one. Optics aren't helped by the fact that the critical reception of this game has been pretty poor. You can see right here from 26 critic reviews, we're looking at a Metascore of 62%, and what reviewers had to say about this game, it's pretty scathing stuff, and stuff that I find myself agreeing with as I play through the game. So some of the quotes we're seeing from numerous media outlets include: the game falls short in almost every conceivable aspect. Here we have everything good about this game is undermined by its games as a service shackles, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Every single gameplay choice they made went in the opposite direction of what I consider fun to play. Beneath the entertaining action and well-performed characters lies an average looter shooter in which you repeat about 5 activities endlessly. The repetition and monotony of this game is what killed it for me in particular. Like, I'm having a hard time finishing it. Thoroughly frustrating game to play, says IGN. Engaging mission design is nearly non-existent. Ultimately falls flat due to the repetitive nature of the missions and combat encounters. Boss battles against some of history's most legendary characters feel like generic fights. Yeah, I found the boss battles in this game also disappointing, which sucks. Those are supposed to be the highlight. You're fighting the freaking Justice League, and those battles just don't live up to, just how big of a deal that is. Nothing particularly interesting to offer here, says Eurogamer Portugal. Here's GamePro, a shadow of what once made Rocksteady one of the best developers for open world action games. Full package feels soulless, so on and so forth. Anything live service about the game entirely complicates what is otherwise a winning formula. Again, held back by its live service elements that I think was a huge mistake for this game. A game that's much better than we were expecting, but also a game that deserved much, much more. So even the more positive reviews that are sort of more in the green, in the 75% or above, have complaints about it that, highlight that this was not the package that they were hoping out of Rocksteady, and that this could have been much more than what it turned out to be. Video Games Chronicle had I think the most positive review for the game, and they say that it is a visually stunning anti-hero romp that's fun to play, even if the things you're actually doing are somewhat repetitive. Even the more positive reviews agree with just how repetitive and monotonous and dull this game can get. And then looking at user reviews for Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, it's sitting at, roughly 4.3, generally unfavorable. There's not a whole lot of positivity to be found on Metacritic. Now, if you look at Steam reviews, you'll find that the score is actually better than you'd expect. It's a very positive score of 85%. But even looking at the positive reviews, what they all say is that I'm having fun enough with this game to give it a thumbs up, but it's not worth its asking price. So wait for a discount, says this positive review. People are going to love this game when it's $30. Fun game, but not worth $70. It's a good game, just not worth $70, or not $70 good, so on and so forth. Not my kind of game, but for those who do enjoy looter shooters, there's enough here. The core mechanics are good enough. The combat works well enough, and the mobility options are varied enough where I can see some people like enjoying like a 10-hour, 15-hour ride for this game and just kind of losing themselves in the campaign for a bit and experiencing some cool DC moments. But overall, as a game from Rocksteady, and as a game that's trying to, live among the other live services that are currently thriving, I feel like Suicide Squad falls woefully short. And looking at reviews from content creators, I mean, plenty of negativity. That you'd be hard-pressed to find any positive reviews. Some of them are out there, but generally, for the most part, people are not recommending the game or found it to be a soul-crushing experience, or, it is just not a positive landscape as far as optics for the game is concerned. And I guess to top it off, let me talk about my experience with the game. I've got some notes here that I want to talk about. So the pros of this game, the stuff that I found ideal or adequate or good even, include the cutscenes and overall presentation. I think are well done. It's fun to watch the cutscenes of the game. I think the voice actors and the performances in general do a really great job. And the game also visually looks pretty good overall and performed well, at least on my PC. I have an RTX 4090 though, so your mileage may vary, but I was getting anywhere from 70 to 100 frames per second consistently. I think the game does have some cool moments here and there in the campaign, and I'd say the core combat and mobility mechanics are fun enough. It's just a shame that the game built around those mechanics just can't support the fun gameplay. And so that brings us to the bad elements of this game. The primary thing that turned me off was the repetitive mission level and encounter designs. There's just this sense of you're doing the same thing over and over again. It feels like the same, 4 or 5 activities just recycled over and over again. The lack of enemy variety and the lack of different strategies for different enemy types doesn't help matters. And so enemies all start to feel the same. And it feels like as you're, treading along this campaign and trying to find the numerous MacGuffins to defeat the Justice League, you're not doing anything new and interesting, and the gameplay doesn't evolve enough as you play through the game. There's also this lack of seamlessness where, we're in the Arkham series, there's no mission menu screen or whatever, or some weird mission rewards screen where they throw basically an in-game loot box at you. It's all just one seamless adventure that keeps you sort of immersed in the game, whereas this game feels like when you trigger a mission and those mission screens pop up and whatever, you're triggering an event. So it feels very video gamey. It feels very live servicey, and so it just loses that sense of I'm living and inhabiting this world. And the open world itself feels very dull and empty. There's not a whole lot in the way of fun activities you encounter along the way. The boss fights with the Justice League, I kind of touched upon this before, but yeah, it is for the most part I found disappointing. I was especially looking forward to fighting Batman, but that second time you encounter Batman, when you actually defeat him, it was so lame the way the character was represented. I more enjoyed the way he was represented in your first encounter with him, though in that encounter you're meant to lose, he's meant to beat your ass. But just in general, I feel like all of the heroes should be beating your ass. I feel like the heroes and their boss battles don't show their true potential. It's funny just how much more powerful they are in cutscenes than they are during gameplay. You don't buy that the Suicide Squad could actually kill them if the Justice League heroes were using all of their powers efficiently. And even putting suspension of disbelief aside, just from a pure gameplay standpoint, I feel like the bosses are mechanically just not that interesting. It's just, it doesn't feel epic and cool to fight these guys. They just feel like bullet sponges with a twist here and there. And not to mention that the deaths of each individual Justice League member, like, it just doesn't feel earned. There's not the weight and gravity that they deserve. Like, we're talking about 5 of the most popular and powerful characters in popular media, and their deaths just feel so unceremonious, given their stature and given what a big deal this is to not only be fighting the Justice League, but killing them. I don't feel like the game really does those moments justice or gives them the weight for me to feel like these moments are really a huge deal. And then going back to gameplay, I think the HUD is an absolute mess. There's just always so much stuff happening on screen when you're engaged in combat. Numbers popping up everywhere, bars filling up everywhere. I mean, everything's just a different color, and so it's hard to like keep your eyes focused on any one thing or to like differentiate any one thing. And it just like it genuinely like hurts my eyes a little bit. It's just too much to look at and just kind of disorienting to play this game as a result. The plot overall, I just wouldn't say was very satisfactory. And because it's meant to be like a long-term live service, the way they leave things open for future seasons, if you will, the way they did it through this particular plot device, I thought was kind of lame, and it made this particular story feel kind of incomplete. Like, I don't mind, of course, them leaving things open for future content, but man, I don't think this game is gonna last as long as the plot seems to hint it will. I don't think this will be a completed story if things continue at this pace. And then there's the post-game stuff, which I haven't gotten into because I haven't finished the game yet, but just about everyone who I've seen report on that front have said that the post-game is just very shallow and repetitive and not particularly worthwhile. With a campaign completed, you don't have like a narrative hook to keep you going, and so you're left with the sort of monotonous gameplay to just redo over and over and over again, and that's basically the whole post-game. Nothing in the way of compelling progression loops or gameplay loops or evolving gameplay that keeps the experience fresh and interesting. And then there's the online requirement for this game that I've found to be very frustrating. This being a game that you can play without other players. This being promoted as a game that you don't have to do online co-op for. The fact that it features an online requirement is something of a travesty, and I've highlighted one instance that I ran into where I'm playing this mission where I'm pretty deep into it, and then at one point, for some reason, the game lost connection with the servers. You can see just how messy the HUD is just from this, but right here you can see that the game just decides that in my single-player playthrough of the game, decides to just boot me out of the game, and so I had to restart this mission, and this is one of those situations that's just like unacceptable when I've decided to not engage with other players. I decided to play this game on my own. It's perfectly playable on your own, and the fact that even in that scenario you can just get booted off the game because of server issues or online connection issues is ridiculous and should not be the norm, and yet here we are. The point where optics surrounding this game shifted was when it was revealed that it'd be a live service. That happened during its marketing campaign, and ever since, the optics of this game just have not been able to recover, and especially not so now that many people's fears have been proven right about this game. The live service stuff, the looter shooter stuff, is really what gets in the way of this game. It is the thing that is holding this game back. It's, I think, the thing that's going to kill this game, and I feel like this game would have been performing a lot better. The player numbers would have been higher, would have sold more copies, and it would be remembered better if it had dispensed with those elements and just stuck with a focused single-player campaign experience. With a piss-poor critical reception, and based on what the numbers are showing here, a piss-poor commercial performance alongside player numbers that indicate just the general lack of interest surrounding this game, I don't foresee this being a game that will last very long. I don't foresee this being a live service that will stand the test of time. I think we're looking at a live service that will join the likes of Anthem and Marvel's Avengers, which were made by studios who are more specialized in single-player experiences, and when they made their live service, you know, you could see the potential of what they were going for, but they could not execute well enough for those live services to stand out or for them to ultimately be able to survive. I feel like we're basically going through the same thing as Anthem and Marvel's Avengers did with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, except the numbers here, the player numbers, look even worse than something like Marvel's Avengers did. So I have even less hope than I did for Marvel's Avengers that Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League will have any legs to stand on for the long term. Or at the very least, that's one man's take. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, and if you've played the game, what your experience has been like with the game. And to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.